It is 10:03. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. 25-year-old Scotty Scheffler went one under in the final round of the Masters on Sunday, finishing the tournament at 10 under par, 3 strokes ahead of Rory McIlroy to secure his first ever major. Scheffler joins Tiger Woods and Jordan Spieth as the only players 25 or younger to win a Masters. The Preds grabbed a point on the road on Sunday following an overtime at the Pittsburgh Penguins 3-2. Still in that first wild card spot in the Western Conference, Preds hold a 1-point advantage over the Dallas Stars, who are in that second wild card spot with 10 regular season games remaining. Up next, a return home to face San Jose tomorrow night. To the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies finished out the regular season with a 139-110 loss to the Boston Celtics Sunday, heading into the postseason as the 2 seed in the Western Conference. Now, the play-in tournament begins on Tuesday. ESPN reported last night that the LA Lakers are parting ways with head coach Frank Vogel, who said he had not been told of the firing in front of the media on Sunday. The report saying the decision would be communicated to Vogel today. College baseball, top-ranked Tennessee brought out the brooms for a 4th straight sweep in SEC play, going 3-0 at home over Mizzou over the weekend, winning 4-3 Sunday. That's a 12-0 start for the Vols in conference play, the best in SEC history. Tennessee 31-1 overall. The Vandy boys traveled to Auburn and dropped a 3rd consecutive SEC series, falling 8-2 on Sunday to lose 2 out of the 3 and fall to 22-9. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome in on this Monday. Hope everybody had a tremendous weekend. Happy to have you guys back in for another week here on 104.5 The Zone. Lucas Panzica and Brett Batchelor are back there making it happen today. Apparently, our fragile, very fragile ecosystem is getting ready to be disrupted. We'll have Lucas and Brett explain what the hell's going on here in just a second. We got Mock Draft Monday. We got a bunch of different things to talk about in sports. Would love to have your participation. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on our humble little radio program here. 615-737-1045 is how things get started. Fantastic non-football weekend. I don't even know how many different options that we all had to pick from, whether you're a Nashville Predators fan, understanding that those 2 games, 2 tough games against the Florida Panthers and the Pittsburgh Penguins, 1 home, 1 on the road, didn't go the way that you wanted, but still postseason playoff looking pretty secure at this point. Need to continue to handle business throughout the course of the regular season, but things are trending in the right direction for the Nashville Predators, despite back-to-back L's. You've got the Memphis Grizzlies, who also did not win last night, but set a franchise record for third quarter scoring. They put 141 on the New Orleans Pelicans the other night. They're getting ready to find out who they're going to play in the play-in tournament now that the NBA playoffs are officially upon us. We got to talk about a ridiculous story happening with LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers later on. People always seem to have an opinion on LeBron, and I think that there are some interesting storylines to pick at here if you haven't been following the Frank Vogel situation. And if you're just looking for a reason to rip LeBron James, I'm going to give you one because I feel like doing it too today. But outside of that, I mean, Nashville SC played this weekend. You had Formula One, midnight Formula One fellowship at Nobles in East Nashville, Lucas. I didn't last the entire race. I didn't make it the entire race. But we had a great show. We had a great showing of people that listen to this show and organized by people who listen to this show. And many thanks to Nobles for letting us hang out there for a little F1 after dark. It was a great weekend, much less the Masters. We haven't even gotten to that.
Capped off by Ferrari bringing it home.
Did that make you feel good?
Yes.
What was better for you this weekend? Ferrari getting the win in the Australian Grand Prix or seeing the Wild Feathers at Mercyland?
Oh, love Ferrari, but the Wild Feathers were awesome, man.
Look at you. You're still glowing.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
And we'll get into that later on as well. But I think the biggest story this weekend, and we'll get into more detail later on, nationally, it's Scottie Scheffler, 25-year-old American who's just won his first Masters championship. He's a bit of a rising star, at least, and maybe Brett could speak a little better to this than I. Brett follows golf much more closely on a regular basis than I think you and I do, Lucas. But looking at how the rest of the world is looking at Scottie Scheffler, he's still a bit of a rising star outside. I don't know if the golf community views him as that as well, people who have been following this more closely. I've heard the name. I know that he's been around for a little bit. I'm not familiar with his career outside of this. If you're watching majors on a regular basis, fine. If you're somebody who just gravitates towards the Masters at this time of year, then you're probably learning a little bit about Scottie Scheffler as you go. But he held off Rory and Cameron Smith. It got really dramatic on Sunday to win by 3 strokes. And I was curious to see, and this was the conversation that we had prior to the Masters weekend taking place, because I think we'd all kind of, talked ourselves into the idea that, okay, after Thursday, that Tiger Woods was actually going to be in this thing in a way that was meaningful. And to his credit, made the cut, did finish his 24th Masters, limping and grabbing at himself in pain throughout the course of it, but just being there, an accomplishment in and of itself. And I'd be fascinated to know how the attention span shifted this weekend from people like me who were saying, okay, I was going to watch the Masters anyway, but now I'm legitimately invested. Now I've got a rooting interest in a way that I did not have before. Now I want to see this man, 25 years and a handful of days removed from winning his first Masters, come out here and kick this thing's ass again, right? And as Friday went on and the weather turned bad, as we talked about with Brett Kern, probably, for even for April, like that was as unpleasant of conditions as I've seen in watching the Masters over several years. Wind, just cold, unpleasant to be out there. You're already dealing with a bit of a heavy track given the conditions that had been leading up to the Masters at Augusta. But Scottie Scheffler pulling it off in spectacular fashion in a really fun way. Yeah, Prometheus on the Zone TV chat, where you can interact with us, Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. He's on Twitch, says, you got Tiger Woods out there dropping F-bombs. He's getting a little fired up, giving the people some juice.
That's how you know he's back.
You look at the crowd, what, just the language? Profanity?
Yeah, he had an F-bomb like on the front 9 on Thursday, and it was like, yes. There he is.
Just a little fist pump.
Telling his ball to bleep off on like the 8th hole of the day.
There are a few things. There's precious little about the access that they let us have in-game or in-tournament that matters for the television broadcast. I've long believed that the sideline interview in football and the halftime interview in football are among the most useless things that we have. They're just saying nothing, right? But mic'd up for sound golfers, when you get them in an honest moment, and you're like, oh, you may not play golf like I do, but you feel the game of golf like I do.
Yeah.
Just telling your tee shot bleep off.
Well, even the conversations with the caddy on the fairway are sometimes they're fascinating to kind of tune into.
Cousin Hightower says, I heard the F-bomb. LOL. It was epic. Indeed. But it was an epic weekend of golf removed from Tiger. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Golf has plenty of fans. Golf has a major following. Obviously, the Masters is going to supersede all of that, but I found myself made sad by the idea that I'd already talked myself in on the front end to Tiger. Okay, maybe 40-1, feeling spicy. And then, understandably, things spiraled on him when you're seeing bogey. And you're okay, enough of this on Saturday and Sunday.
And then the winner of the tournament joins a very short list that includes Tiger of champions 25 or under at the Masters.
It's very impressive. Brett Batchelor will give us a little bit of golf information coming up next. Luke, you want to explain to people what's happening today? Because I feel like we need to let people know.
Yeah, we've got like a substitute teacher situation going on here. where Brett's going to step in for 90 minutes. I've got to step out, something that all producers at the Zone have to go through, an online training that we're all very much looking forward to here in about 15 minutes.
Now, wait, that's not true because Brett's a producer. Is he not a digital producer?
He is a digital producer.
What then? What?
He's
Brett,
good.
I can't hear you. You don't have a microphone.
He said he's already got the Zone TV stuff handled.
We're off to a smashing start. Just Brett from the background, very quietly off mic.
We've got something that Zone producers have to go through that I'm sure Brett will go through at some point. But for right now, he's going to be a substitute teacher, keeping you in check for 90 minutes.
Okay, now put Brett in front of the microphone so that I can hear him. Brett, how do we feel about the substitute teacher situation? Do you feel that you're going to be able to deal with this? Because unlike, much like any substitute teacher situation that any of us have been through, I'm likely to take advantage of the situation. Do you feel comfortable in that? Do you feel secure?
We've worked together before, so I understand it. So, I'm ready for it. I did this again 3 weeks ago with Coach Doug Matthews, so I've been getting reps, if you should say, so I feel like I'm ready for it.
All right, find out next. Oh, hit the button, Brett. Welcome back. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. I was getting a kick out of a couple of things that are being sent to us throughout the course of the show. We're going to talk about one of the biggest embarrassments in sports this weekend with one of the big three, one of the major professional sports, their regular season coming to an end last night, and this embarrassment directly involving LeBron James. We spent a lot of time last week talking about the idea that, LeBron has had publicly poor moments. The situation with Daryl Morey, the former general manager of the Houston Rockets, with James Harden and LeBron James involving the comments on Chinese labor forces and the Chinese society, given the NBA's ties, how much money the NBA has been making in China, and the idea that basically LeBron did something that was akin to protect the bag. Outside of that, and that's a bad one, there hasn't been a ton, for as long as this guy's been in our public view, hadn't been a ton of these horrendous moments that LeBron has had. Now, I'm not going to compare LeBron missing the playoffs with the Lakers twice in his career there. And shockingly enough, Lucas and I found out that he's been a Laker since 2018, since Mike Vrabel's first season with the Titans, which feels like way too long. I don't know why that's the case. I think this is pandemic brain fog that's happening to me. But I'm not going to compare LeBron's missteps on, Chinese human rights violations to missing the postseason. Not going to do that today. But looking at the situation that went down with the Los Angeles Lakers last night, the idea that they are not going to make the playoffs, but in a win, somebody within that organization is leaking out to Adrian Wojnarowski, the Adam Schefter of NBA News, that the Lakers are expected to fire Frank Vogel and that he's not expected to be informed until Monday, except for the fact that Woj, who has, a fair amount of pretty solid following, Woj does at this point in his career. 5.2 million followers. 5.2 million people are being told before Frank Vogel is that, he's expected to be fired, but the team's not going to tell him until Monday. And this was the tweet directly after the win for Los Angeles. Vogel has coached his final game for the Lakers, a decision that's expected to be shared with him as soon as Monday, sources tell ESPN. Lakers search expected to be lengthy and expansive with no clear initial frontrunner. So Frank Vogel wins the basketball game, ends the season on a win. Little bit of feel good for a season that's got to be pretty frustrating for LeBron, who's clearly playing for the scoring title or a share of the scoring title. Joel Embiid ended up winning it, but LeBron playing for statistics this year more than wins because they've been lost. He put together a team that was terrible, LeBron did. Because, of course, at this stage in his career, really since the decision, that guy gets to decide where he's going to go and how a franchise is going to build a team around him. So Frank Vogel wins the game. And this Woj tweet is just floating out there. And so he comes to the press conference, Frank Vogel does, and he's asked, "Hey, Coach, have you heard anything about this?" This was Frank Vogel, former Lakers head coach, last night.
Frank, right at the end of the game, Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted that the Lakers are going to be firing you, a decision they'll let you know tomorrow. Have you communicated with the front office at all about your future? And I guess what's your reaction to hearing that?
And I'm going to enjoy tonight's game, celebrate what these young guys did in terms of scratching and clawing and getting back in this game, getting a W. And, we'll deal with tomorrow.
So that part that sounded like it cut out, maybe you thought your radio had just lost signal for a hot second. No, that's Frank Vogel saying, "I haven't been told bleep," except without the bleep. So ESPN bleeped it on the television copy. "I haven't been told bleep. I'm just trying to enjoy this win tonight with these young guys." And it's one of the most, not only is the way that the Lakers have handled this starts to become a massive indictment of LeBron James throughout the course of his career. In the era of legacy chasing that he's in, he has diminished himself so much by going to an organization, to a team like LA, who is currently in the middle of it's not a docu-series. How would you describe Winning Time, Lucas?
I don't know about docu-series.
A comedy?
It is
Perhaps.
funny.
But it's chronicling Magic Johnson's arrival at the Los Angeles Lakers in the 80s when they were a nothing, nowhere franchise, when the NBA was soon to be lost, and where the Buss family takes this thing over and uses Magic and Showtime and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to dig this thing back out of the gutter. And the portrayal of a lot of these figures, Jerry Buss, at the time, the head coach. I'm blanking on the head coach.
You talking about Jerry West?
Jerry West, sorry. Jerry West, his portrayal in the show, Magic Johnson, so many different people. His wife, Cookie, by name, in ways that are very uncomfortable when the Magic is portrayed as being the 80s version of Thirsty. Very much so, out in Los Angeles. Understandably so, as a young basketball star, national championship winning top prospect, coming in with what the just game-changing amount of, $500,000? $500,000 at the time. NBA's come a long way. So all these different things, and then you're looking at where a championship organization like the Lakers is, and you understand that Los Angeles has won titles with LeBron there. Well, title, singular. The bubble title, right? The thing that's forever going to be marred by, shortened season. And by the way, if you want to jump in on this, 615-737-1045 is the number. How big a failure do you place this on? Do you think LeBron James is anywhere close to catching Michael Jordan at this stage of his career? Because I think we've been far removed from that, just by percentages, just by the fact that we have so much more access to LeBron than we did Michael or any of these stars, where we're talking about Tiger and LeBron and Brady in the same kind of breath, but it's not that. LeBron is different. He's altered this in ways that are great if you're a professional athlete, completely changed the game to allow them to have this kind of power. But this is something that is completely of his own making, and he's run a championship organization into the ground. Now, the way that they fired Frank Vogel is wild and embarrassing. In fact, I was reading Bill Oram of The Athletic this morning, a column titled "Lakers' Shameful Handling of Frank Vogel Should Be Warning to Potential Replacements." And this has been the case for LeBron for several years, across several organizations. It's why the thing with Pat Riley came to an end, because they disrespected one of the most important people historically in the entire sport. This is how Bill Oram opens his column. Help wanted. Are you a proven NBA head coach who doesn't mind being hung out to dry and humiliated, who enjoys being second-guessed and micromanaged? The Los Angeles Lakers have just the job for you. The ideal candidate understands the privilege of working for the 17-time champion Lakers vastly outweighs things like job security, input on personnel, and professional courtesy. Dignity is far from a way of life with the Lakers. In fact, it's a word. Success will be duly rewarded with a contract extension, but not just any contract extension, an extension for 1 entire year. You will be the envy of your peers because, you get to work for the Lakers. You will be provided a roster of only the finest remaining participants from the 2007 All-Star Game. And here's the most exciting part. When your time in the Lakers family comes to an end, you won't have to suffer the indignity of being told face-to-face by your supervisor. No! You can have the comfort of knowing millions on Twitter are learning your fate at the exact same time you are. Apply today. As soon as, we tell our old coach. Note, candidates with famous names will be given priority with this organization. Everybody knew that Frank Vogel was going to get fired. Everybody knew that LeBron James had checked out in the middle of the season. No matter what his public comments are, and even his public comments about this whole thing, a thing that he has caused, bringing in Russell Westbrook, bringing in Carmelo Anthony at the end of his career, putting together, as Bill Oram writes, the 2007 All-Star team and then being outraged at the disrespect that we all had at the beginning of the season, where he's tweeting out things like, keep that energy, basically. Crown emoji, crown emoji, crown emoji, old guys coming for your stuff. And then they miss the playoffs. Then they poop themselves. And Frank Vogel's the fall guy? Trash. It stinks because I've talked about this through the prism of Derrick Henry before, where LeBron is one of these people, Derrick is one of these athletes who I feel there's such a conversation around them where you almost forget to appreciate the greatness athletically, just athletically, not winning, not rings, though he has them, not Michael, whatever, independent of all these other things, separation of art from artist, the art of watching LeBron James, Derrick Henry, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, at the height of their profession, a lot of it gets lost in polarization around champion, right? Polarization around winning. LeBron has been bad guy, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy, again, all in one career cycle. I mean, he's lasted long enough in the NBA, and he's still clearly capable of performing at a high level, but it feels like his discussion, in the same way that we just talked about Tiger Woods in golf, he's harmed himself irreparably in the way that people are going to view him. He already was working against, comments on the fringe of politics that make people have strong opinions about him. And he's been hugely active in a lot of different things, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. He's been out there publicly like this, apparently not enough for people like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who I think the other weekend called or basically said he should be ashamed of himself for the stance that he's taken on public matters, on societal matters. But regardless, I'm talking about the legacy of this dude among the greatest athletes that we've ever seen. I don't think you can have that conversation around him anymore when he's taken a lot of this on himself, which is new. It's new ground for an athlete, except when you read the stories coming out of, I think it was Front Office Sports last week, and that had the story of what the Dolphins were basically going to offer Tom Brady, player ownership status, a percentage of the franchise to come play quarterback for the Dolphins. LeBron's really the only one who's done it that way. Maybe you include Aaron Rodgers throwing a hissy and saying that he wants Randall Cobb back. Maybe that's the same kind of thing. I don't know. But LeBron has done this with several different organizations across several years, and I think he's done it poorly. He's done it first. He's the first to do it. So maybe it's different. Maybe it's wrong of me to armchair quarterback, armchair GM, the guy that's doing this without much precedent. But I think if you're talking about legacy at this stage in his life, at this stage in his career, you got to look at it as being tarnished by no one other than himself, because he's the one making all these decisions. Rob Pelinka is the face. Apparently it was too hot in there for Magic Johnson after he got LeBron, or said that he got LeBron to come to L.A. and then was on First Take and started taking out people like Rob Pelinka. Because, Magic's Showtime. Magic's a wink and a smile. Magic is as superficial as anybody in professional sports. But because he's great, we'll put him on television. Because he's great, we'll put him in the front office of a very, very prestigious one that he helped make, by the way. So maybe he's earned a little more of that. But just, there's a lot of things that Magic does he gets just by being Magic. And maybe he's earned those opportunities just by being Magic. But a lot of this stuff, you look at LeBron and what he's done and just sit there and thinking, this is as embarrassing as anything. Anything that he has on his resume. And I don't know that you're able to dig yourself out of that. The Lakers should be embarrassed. And it's funny to watch what we have going on here in Tennessee. The Memphis Grizzlies, we don't know who their opponent is going to be. They've secured the second seed in the NBA playoffs. And, of course, the play-in tournament now begins after the regular season concluded last night. The league has moved on from LeBron, Westbrook, Melo, Dwayne Wade is now sitting there doing TNT on Tuesday nights. It's moved on from that, and Ja is the next wave. The Grizzlies owner, who I didn't know much about, but because of the profile of the Grizzlies now, because the league has decided, all right, Ja is young, Ja is exciting, Ja is highlight reel every night, understanding that he's been down and out with injury for some time. Although it was funny, Pete Pranica, the voice of the Memphis Grizzlies, is going to join us tomorrow because they iced Petey out on the broadcast for Ja's first game back, because you can't be hanging out in the M without a chain on your neck. It was a really, really funny moment. But the league has decided that they're moving on from this generation from a portrayal standpoint. When all along, you're looking at the way that these different leagues handle their players, their business, between Roger Goodell and the NFL, MLB, and Rob Manfred, who's just come through an entirely different situation of their own. And now that baseball's back in our lives for almost a week at this point, you start to forget how horribly that was handled throughout the course of this. And then the NBA, who has been the progressive league, but to what effect? Other than Adam Silver doesn't seem to be working for the consumer anymore. The commissioner of the NBA is clearly working for the players in ways that are clear and obvious. The NFL, the way they stay in business, the way they remain America's most popular sport outside of the product on the field, is that they placate the consumer first and foremost, to the detriment sometimes of the athletes. Now, maybe there's a balance in there, but you're looking at the way that these things are run, the way that LeBron James has been completely allowed to warp professional basketball, and it's not for the sports fans anymore. Outside if you're gambling. If you're gambling, then you're in on it. If you're gambling, you're snorting this stuff. If you're gambling, you're locked on NBA TV every night to watch a sad Pelicans Pistons game at an 8:30 tip. Outside of those people, there's not a lot of stuff that draws you to that league, especially when it's superstar at the height. The biggest superstar isn't even going to be in the playoffs this year. It's a missed opportunity. It's an embarrassment. Eric writes on Zone TV, LeBron thinks he's I can't say that word. He's a bleeping god, when in fact he's just one piece, and he's a piece that's washed up now. Well, I disagree with both of those things, as a matter of fact. I don't think LeBron's washed. I mean, he's out there competing for the scoring title. Brad, if you could look up for me, how old is LeBron James right now? Because he's clearly closer to 40 than he is to 30 at this stage in his career. He's been in the league for 18 years. LeBron has still, he was pushing Joel Embiid up until last night for that scoring title.
37, turns 38 this December.
And he wants to last long enough to play with his son, according to reports, and still able to turn it on. Now, how much of that helps a team, and how much of that is just LeBron being ball dominant, saying, okay, if I can't have the playoffs this year, then I'm going to have some kind of accolade associated with me while the rest of the sports consuming public drags me through the internet sewers. So I don't think he's washed, and I don't think he's just one piece. He is the piece that gets to decide this thing. There's a reason why Frank Vogel, for all the reasons that in this column just laid out this help wanted ad. Are you a proven NBA head coach who doesn't mind being hung out to dry and humiliated, who enjoys being second-guessed and micromanaged? If so, the Los Angeles Lakers have just the job for you. Plenty of people are taking that job around that guy. Even as you're seeing Bill Plaschke, who's been at the LA Times for forever, writing articles well before the trade deadline saying, hey, get rid of this guy. Get what you can for LeBron. And yet still at 37 going on 38, there's an entire league willing to capitulate to him. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. When we come back, we'll get into the Masters weekend. Brett Batchelor, who is in for Lucas for a portion of the show today, he'll give us a little bit of his thoughts, given that he followed the Masters more closely than any of us. And also, we got to talk about this Tennessee baseball team that's out here just clubbing people to death. I'm Buck Reising. That's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back on this Monday. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. Got a lot of comments coming in about the LeBron James conversation that we just had. Donald B. writes in, I once asked LeBron if he had change for $1. He said, sorry, bro. I only have 3 quarters. It's a terrible joke. It's a terrible joke. This is what we've resorted to. Brett is laughing off the microphone, which, of course, does not work on an audio medium.
I'm sorry?
No, that's a fake laugh. Now you're just doing it for effect. Now I've see what me and Lucas work through this all the time. It's a very delicate ecosystem that you've stepped into, Brett. We'll get a master's summary from Brett here in just a second. You played college golf, right?
I did. I played college golf for 6 years.
Okay.
Don't get that very often, but I had a redshirt year, and then I came back for my 5th year to get a minor and keep playing college golf. That's when COVID hit. Then there was no jobs. I could play a 6th year. I did, turned my minor into a 2nd major and got 2 degrees out of it.
Okay, look at that. Very industrious, very efficient. Unlike this radio show, I'm sure this would be a breath of fresh air. Because Lucas does this to me a lot, too. I'll read a joke. Of course, there will just be silence. Because if he finds it funny, and rarely does he even give me a smile when I'm working on material here, he'll just leave his microphone off. So it'll just be dead air.
I'll try and fill the air for you.
But theater of the mind, baby. Come on, Brett. No, it's not your fault. It's my fault. 615-737-1045. So let's talk about the Masters a little bit before we move on to Tennessee baseball being literally record-setting so far this season in the way that they're just absolutely clubbing people at this point. Scotty Scheffler, of course, wins his first Masters, 25 years of age. As we said, the American holding off Rory McIlroy and Cameron Smith to win by 3 strokes. Brett, the whole thing around this for me was, all right, Tigers, I'm in anyway. Tiger's going to keep me invested. Once Tiger fades, my attention will fade. And we talked about this with Brett Kern, who's a golf nerd, golf nut, Titans punter. He's in here as our Masters analyst every year. Brett was talking about a number of different storylines that he was following. What kept you interested in the golf? Outside of the final round getting dramatic, what kept you interested in the golf this weekend?
For me, part of it was Cam Smith, because that's who I picked at the beginning of the week. Because other than Scotty Scheffler, he is the best golfer in the world right now. He won earlier this year in Hawaii. He won the Players' Championship. He's by far has the best short game in the world right now. So coming into this week, he's played very well here before. I knew there would be a good chance for Cam Smith to be at the top of the leaderboard. And he was up there as well. Now, I wasn't surprised to see Scotty up there with him, but I knew going into this week, for me, being just so deep into the golf game, with the weather being the way that it was, whoever were the best ball strikers that week were going to be at the top of the leaderboard. And that's what we saw after the first 2 rounds. Sung J M, Joaquin Niemann, Scotty Scheffler. Those guys are notoriously at the top of the list and the best ball strikers. And when they can get their putter going, that's when they win their tournaments. And that's what you saw this week. So knowing that the weather was going to be bad, for me, it was who's going to strike the ball correctly and play the golf course with the best mental approach.
And that's the way that it bared out. I mean, he really didn't feel any heat till Sunday.
No.
It felt like he was in control of that thing the entire time, and Rory was trailing by, I believe, 10 strokes.
Yes.
Heading into the final round, he ended up finishing second after an 8-under par 64. Smith and Shane Lowry ended up tying for third. They were 5 strokes off the lead at this Masters tournament. And just looking, I mean, the place that golf is in, because I don't know how often we need to do this, and I honestly think this is lazy analysis on my part. And I say that only because as somebody who isn't married to golf on a regular basis, like if I happen to be home and there's nothing else on TV, I'll throw on the golf, right? Because I've got Golf Channel, I might as well. Like it's just something to have on television while I'm working for the next day or whatever. Outside of that, like it felt like golf was in a decent spot, even though Dustin Johnson doesn't play a ton leading up to the Masters, so he kind of fades a little bit at this time of year. You're looking at guys like Bryson DeChambeau, who is more famous for his internet feud with Brooks Koepka and being super chunky on the tour than he is for, and, of course, just absolutely rocket launching the thing off the tee box. Is golf in a good enough place to carry on at some point after Tiger? Because I felt it. I felt myself lose enthusiasm about the tournament this week and start to fade from it as he became less and less relevant, even as he made the cut.
it's in a good spot, but they need that one guy to just be the new face of the tour. They don't have that face guy, and Scotty can be that guy. This is his 4th win in the last 6 weeks, and so he's starting to become a better and better player as it comes on. But you got all the young guys. They went through the new wave 6-7 years ago with Ricky Fowler, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas. Now you're coming through the new wave again with the guys we just mentioned, Scotty Scheffler, Cam Smith, Joaquin Neiman. So you're starting to come into that every 7 or 8 years or so. There's a brand new, they call it the young wave every single time, but you're coming into that young wave now of new guys that are going to become the face and the new names of the PGA Tour.
Let's hear from Scotty Scheffler, 25-year-old American who won his first Masters yesterday. This was the press conference.
I think because it's the Masters. I've dreamed of having a chance to play in this golf tournament. I teared up the first time I got my invitation in the mail. We were fortunate enough to play here in college, and I love this place. I love this golf course. And there's just, if you're going to choose a golf tournament to win, this would be the tournament I would want to win.
That's Scotty Scheffler speaking yesterday, and that's probably the case. Like if you had one shot at any major on the tour,
this is the one.
You want the Masters.
This is the one.
You want the Masters. When we come back, we're going to talk about an exciting weekend for Tennessee athletics. Not just what Tennessee did to Missouri in their college baseball series, but an exciting recruiting weekend as well. Baseball doing a lot of recruiting for the football team. Didn't think you'd see that. We'll tell you how that came about coming up next.
Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. 25-year-old Scotty Scheffler went 1 under in the final round of the Masters on Sunday, finishing the tournament at 10 under par, 3 strokes ahead of Rory McIlroy to secure his first ever major. Scheffler joins Tiger Woods and Jordan Spieth as the only players 25 or younger to win a Masters. The Preds grabbed a point on the road on Sunday following an overtime at the Pittsburgh Penguins 3-2. Still in that first wild card spot in the Western Conference, Preds hold a 1-point advantage over the Dallas Stars, who are in that second wild card spot with 10 regular season games remaining. Up next, a return home to face San Jose tomorrow night. To the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies finished out the regular season with a 139-110 loss to the Boston Celtics Sunday, heading into the postseason as the 2 seed in the Western Conference. Now, the play-in tournament begins on Tuesday. ESPN reported last night that the LA Lakers are parting ways with head coach Frank Vogel, who said he had not been told of the firing in front of the media on Sunday. The report saying the decision would be communicated to Vogel today. College baseball, top-ranked Tennessee brought out the brooms for a 4th straight sweep in SEC play, going 3-0 at home over Mizzou over the weekend, winning 4-3 Sunday. That's a 12-0 start for the Vols in conference play, the best in SEC history. Tennessee 31-1 overall. The Vandy boys traveled to Auburn and dropped a 3rd consecutive SEC series, falling 8-2 on Sunday to lose 2 out of the 3 and fall to 22-9. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2 underway. Welcome in on this Monday. Hope everybody is feeling right, living well. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045. Brett, you can give me a little more music than that. If you don't mind, I like to hear it for a little bit. It's personal preference.
I got you.
That's Brett Batzler back there making it happen. The praise had been pouring in. We did the Masters update. People like Gary Todd have tweeted us, "Oh, Lucas Panzica, you're head on a swivel.
Thanks,
This
Gary.
new kid is good."
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate that.
He says. And then, Lucas has this super staticky update, and now the job is even in greater jeopardy. Many people are saying.
I'm not here to take anybody's job. I'm just enjoying my time right now.
Oh, see, that's the wrong approach.
I'm just
to
here
have.
so I don't get fined.
That's a good mentality. Just working in the shadows to unseat him. No, Brett's far too kind. 615-737-1045 is the number. Got a lot of things to do yet today. Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports and The Athletic be our Mock Draft Monday guest. Bruce has one of the most informative, in-depth editions of these wretched things each year, one of actual value because Bruce actually talks to people in the world of college football about who these players are, knows these players, given that he covers the league and the sport, and then applies that to his connections in the NFL. So Bruce will give us some really good insight and analysis on the Titans selection later on in the show. In the meantime, I want to start with Vol baseball because Tennessee, again, just absolutely wrecking people in the sport. They have now moved to 12-0 in SEC play. 11-0 was the record in conference play. They blew through it and then yet again swept another SEC opponent, Missouri this time, and doing it in dramatic fashion. This was something that Tony Vitello talked about prior to the game. He went on a local radio show discussing, the energy that he wanted Vols fans to have when it came to this series against Missouri. This was with our buddy Russell Smith at Fox Sports Knoxville. The show is called The Drive. This was Tony Vitello to Vols fans prior to his team sweeping Missouri.
A couple of big home series against Missouri and Alabama, just as far as what you want the atmosphere to be like these next 2 weekends.
3 words: make it nasty. Make it nasty is what comes to mind, and that's because I mean, he's a legendary coach, and his career is over. Otherwise, I wouldn't use his name. But, I mean, Coach Maneri, again, really good guy to me, unbelievable career. But he was so used to being on the other side where his stadium is very difficult. It's very unfriendly for an opponent, and the script flipped a little bit. And, you know, to each his own with their opinion on where they think the line is, where fans go too far. To me, Trey Morgan is a stud first baseman. I think our students ragging on him for a whole game and pointing out everything that he does, it's kind of part of the deal. And he's so good, he might hit a home run and point at those fans on the way around the bases too. That's kind of what makes athletics fun. But at some point in there, I think he was interviewed and said it was nasty over here. And A, it worked, and B, it was a tremendous environment. And it added to the thrill of SEC sports. I mean, it was one more thing to talk about, Tennessee baseball fans. So I don't want to see anyone ever throw anything at anybody. And, again, there is a line where sometimes I turn around and give the old, let's remove that one from our repertoire with some comments. But there's nothing wrong with being into the game and knowing who the opponent is and, you know, trying to help your team win.
That's Tony Vitello. Prior to his team completing the sweep over the Missouri Tigers, they won 4-3 in the series finale yesterday at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. They are alone atop of the record books as having the best start to SEC play of all time. Nobody's had this good of a start. Well, nobody's had this good of a start ever, but nobody's had this good of a start since Ole Miss in 1964. They have this energy, this aura around Tennessee baseball. So much swagger, so much confidence, so much cockiness. But like you just heard Tony say, when they get out of hand, he's got a handle on the situation. He's got that thing in control, even as it appears to be a little bit of a pirate ship, right? They've got swagger. They're polarizing. You need them in college baseball. And what they are doing makes you feel one way or another, especially where Vanderbilt slipped out of the top 25 this weekend, with not a lot of discussion around that. And Tennessee, in the same way that you talk about, it's a different generation of athlete. It's a different generation of just college sports. But in the same way that you associate Miami with the swagger of the U, right? Some of the best ESPN 30 for 30s that the first one was. The second one's kind of I could do without the U part 2. Ran a good thing into the ground. But like when you look at UNLV basketball, when you talk about Miami football, like everybody had an opinion on them. Tennessee can be that for college baseball, and they're doing it in ways that are helping the other athletic programs on campus. Nico Iamaleava, this 5-star quarterback recruit. What, are you surprised that I said that so comfortably, Brett?
No, I just knew where you were going. I thought it was a funny situation.
Okay, very good. Nico's got a T-shirt on that says Mike Honcho. Now, Mike Honcho, outside of being a funny Step Brothers reference, is now associated with the Tennessee baseball team. You got Tony V talking about Mike Honcho on the broadcast against Vanderbilt after, Stickergate, where people are thinking that the bats are corked for Tennessee because they just can't stop hitting home runs. This was Tony V talking about the Mike Honcho thing that now has the football recruits wearing his T-shirts.
How was that situation explained to you with the bat?
I guess, the sticker came off during BP. There was no sticker on the bat. You got to have a sticker. We've actually, since I've learned that, we've got a few bats that somehow conveniently the stickers have come off. So I don't know, but I don't even know that Jordan Beck should be at University of Tennessee, forged his transcript. And it's actually a 35-year-old man named Mike Honcho.
So they're having fun with it. They're getting you involved. By the way, baseball is the only sport that does those in-game interviews well. I mean, that's the only sport that needs it because you have such a long time. The broadcast is slower. You can get those opportunities without, a lot of resistance from players and coaches and managers in real time. But like the Luke Lipsius thing that capped off the latest of their sweep, right? This 4-run effort that he helped lead. He scores the first run of the game. He's got the solo shot. He's looking the batter in the eye in the bottom of the third. He's got his second home run of the game in the bottom of the fifth. And then he has the 2-run home run over the right field wall to score himself and Jared Dickey. And he's celebrating like he's in the bench warmers. Touch home plate, touch home plate. And then he just hovers. He stops, hovers over home plate, and then gently boops it. A little doink. Now, I don't know, because immediately, Vol Baseball put this out because it's great recruiting material, not just for baseball, but clearly for football as well. People just want to be a part of something fun, something cool, something exciting, something energetic, something that doesn't have stale. All the things that baseball is typically not. When you look at what Tennessee baseball is bringing to the conversation, not just around campus right now, because it was a big weekend on campus. Weather was not ideal from what I understand. I saw many, many diehard Tennessee fans. Our buddy John Reed, also at Fox Sports Knoxville, Charlie Burris at A to Z Sports, tweeting how they were terrified of the poor weather, spoiling sleet in April in Knoxville, spoiling the weekend's or the season's biggest recruiting weekend. But they've got this thing at Lindsey Nelson Stadium that everybody wants to be a part of. And not just is it cocky and confident and fun, it wins. And it hasn't stopped winning. In fact, it's only lost once at this point. And it's coming at a time where, I'm never going to doubt Vanderbilt under Tim Corbin out, but the biggest power, certainly in the state, has been Vandy. And now they're, in the early season goings, because we've still got a lot of college baseball to play. But in the early season going, they're washing out a little bit. They'll have plenty of time to get their feet back under them. SEC is hugely competitive as always, or at least competitive after Tennessee. So that's what's taking place at this point. Steven Snyder writes, I was going to get tickets for this weekend series versus Alabama, but every game is sold out for the rest of the home season. I found some on Vivid Seats. That's what I'm saying. You're bringing a crowd, and Tennessee fans will do that, right? Because they haven't had anything like this. They've had good basketball teams. Tournament hasn't gone the way that you've liked for it to under Rick Barnes. You have excitement around football on campus. We'll talk about the spring scrimmage probably tomorrow because there were some notable things. We're going to have Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News-Sentinel give us a little more detail on that, given that he had there's no spring game this year. That's what took the place of the spring game. So to go through the details on that, I think are going to be important. But football is not that. Not yet. Maybe. And even then, you're working against a much more stacked deck, even in the SEC East, as opposed to the SEC West, for Tennessee to be able to have the success that they're having in baseball on a football field. There's still a lot further to go. Tony Vitello is regarded as one of the best, not up-and-comers. He's been in the sport for a long time, coming to Tennessee by way of Arkansas as an assistant there. But you've seen how he's helped grow the program and help put them on a literal national stage. College World Series is something that is almost assuredly in play for a team, for this particular team. And as they continue to roll through the SEC undefeated, there will be more tests ahead. And again, 12 consecutive SEC wins. The Vols are 5 games away from tying the longest winning streak against SEC teams in history. Tennessee did it back in 1994. LSU, the most recent to do it, in 2000. And that's the coach who Vitello would otherwise prefer to leave nameless in Paul Maneri, the crotchety old LSU baseball coach who said that the Tennessee fans were making it nasty. The horror, the shame. Can't have that in baseball. Except you can, and you can have fun with it, and now it can be an actual asset, a tool for you to improve the athletic department writ large. When we come back, we're going to get into a conversation regarding college prospects. We haven't talked draft at all yet today. We'll do a lot of that with Bruce Feldman. But first, I want to get into some insight and analysis on 2 players that I think the Titans very, very much need to consider adding to this year's draft class. We'll tell you who those 2 players are coming up next. You'll get some insight and analysis on them from Greg Cosell as well. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Longer days, warmer weather. This is the time of year you need to be enjoying life without joint pain. Hey, it's Buck Reising. It's time to call QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics is helping people here and all over America get real, lasting pain relief. They use highly concentrated, cutting-edge natural biologic treatments that can restore and repair damaged joint tissue, getting to the root of the pain. It's life-changing. You can get back to moving like you used to with no drugs, no surgery, and no downtime. If you have nagging pain in your knees, your hips, your shoulder, or your back, and you're done with steroids and pain meds, call QC Kinetics. And if they're telling you that surgery is the next option for you, make sure that you get a free consultation and free second opinion at QC Kinetics to learn more about these amazing natural biologic treatments to get you back to enjoying this time of year, doing exactly what you love. Call the local medical professionals at QC Kinetics, 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Go to springhillac.com.
Welcome back. 615-737-1045 is the number to jump in. Let's do a little draft talk, shall we? We got more to do later today. Don't forget Bruce Feldman be here at 12:20. Be good to catch up with Bruce, one of the most connected insiders in the world of college football that we have. And, by the way, we haven't even talked about something that happened to one of the NFL's premier insiders this week. Well, not what happened to Adam Schefter, but what Adam Schefter was a part of regarding the loss of life of Dwayne Haskins. That was just horrifying to learn about on Saturday. We will spend some more time on that later because that is serious subject matter that I want to give appropriate time to. In the meantime, I want to talk about moves that the Titans need to consider and moves that the Titans are considering ahead of the draft, taking place in just a bit under 3 weeks from now, I do believe, which is exciting. Las Vegas going to be the host site, as we well know. And as other teams, as we've seen the NFL news cycle slow to a crawl since the initial waves of free agency, seeing teams that are still out there looking at players like Honey Badger out there on the open market. Backup quarterbacks will start to find homes. More backup quarterbacks will start to find homes once we get through the draft process. Everybody's basically waiting to see how little money they can spend for a better player in the draft before they go and give veteran minimum or, vested veteran or substantial contract money with guarantees attached to it to players who are just going to cost more, right? Even the Rams are looking for ways to try and win at value. Their value on draft picks is substantially less than your favorite football teams might be. But looking at what the Tennessee Titans still need, we had an in-depth conversation about the tight end position with not just Greg Cosell, but with Coach Mack on Friday. And it's something that I think there's a lot of potential for. I think this really aligns well with who the Titans are, what they need, and given the kind of prospect that's in this year's draft. Now, as you well know, or if you've been following the draft coverage so far, you know that the tight ends are not the premium position this year. There is no first-round tight end probably in this draft class. There are a bunch of guys who will go on day 2. There are plenty of guys who will go on day 3. There is a very interesting crop of them that do serve a variety of roles, but obviously the Tennessee Titans have a very specific function for the tight end. You can incorporate some of these different things once you've got your personnel or your base personnel you think set. Jeff Swaim and Austin Hooper now being under contract here gives them a little more positional flexibility to look at a lot of different guys in this tight end group. It sets up well for them to be able to take advantage even without having a second-round pick, because when you talk to scouts about this, a lot of people everybody has a favorite, right? Everybody has a favorite based on how they handle their blocking assignments, whether you can keep them in line as well as flex them out wide and take advantage of matchup opportunities that the tight end position provides, or whether they're just a functional role player but can do that role well. What we thought Anthony Ferkser might be here. Ultimately, that did not pan out the way that they needed it to in a meaningful way, and they've since moved on from Anthony Ferkser. So I want you to hear from about the player who I think has the highest ceiling of this tight end group. Jelani Woods, who is a product of Virginia, grad transfer at Virginia, former Oklahoma State quarterback recruit who then transferred to Virginia looking for more opportunities in the passing game, still kind of new to the position. This dude is a monster. This dude has all of the tangibles that you would want for this player, and he's still pretty raw, which has, depending on your need for immediacy and immediate contributions at the position, you may not consider a guy like Jelani Woods. But I want you to hear Greg Cosell's analysis of him, because When Greg and I talked about this last week on the install, get the podcast wherever you get your podcast, I thought that his insight very much lined up with what the Titans are interested in doing.
Yeah, and I think, Buck, he's just scratching the surface because he was recruited out of high school in Georgia, as you said, as a quarterback, and he won a state championship, but they switched him at Oklahoma State to tight end, and he didn't really get thrown the ball there. So he obviously decided, you know what, if I want to catch the ball, I'm going to leave. So he went to Virginia and became a meaningful part of that pass offense, where he caught, I think, over 40 balls this year. And his tape's fascinating because he's got rare size. He's got good movement. He's got pretty good hands. Body control is good. He showed some run after catch. He was competitive. He's still learning the position as he's playing it, but there's much to like and develop. I mean, he's clearly a plus athlete. Look, guys that big, you would never describe them as explosive or sudden. So you don't really do that because that's not really what guys 6'7", 253 are. But he's a plus athlete for sure. And that size and length gives him build-up speed. He can run a little bit. And by the way, his 40-yard dash, for whatever it means, at the combine was actually pretty good for a man 6'7", 253, by the way. He ran a 4.61. And I think that build-up speed makes him a factor on vertical routes, crossing routes. He certainly can post defenders up and go above the rim to make contested catches and snatch the ball out of the air when the throw's a little high. I think he's got a very appealing combination of traits. And like I said, you know, he might not be your star week one, but I think that he's just beginning to learn how to play tight end, and I think he'll be a good player.
That's Greg Cosell of NFL Films breaking down Jelani Woods, the Virginia tight end. He makes so much sense. I was reading a lot of draft analysis, draft coverage, just trying to make sure that I'm buttoned up on the prospects who I think the Titans are going to be interested in. Now, that's still a wide-ranging list of players, names, positions, skill sets that you have to dig through, but you want to make sure that you're as well-rounded as humanly possible as we all get ready to ramp up our draft analysis and coverage. I know Titans Radio does this work very, very extensively. Rhett and Mike, Coach Mack, Amy, they all take it very, very seriously. It's why they're the best in the business when it comes to local team broadcast crews. But for what Greg's just outlined there, does he not make the most sense? Or does he not make a ton of sense? Trey McBride, I mean, there are conversations around, all right, who's the top prospect in the draft? And I think, you know, as a show, we almost default to Dane Brugler's draft guide. All right, who does Dane say is number one, right? He puts together this monstrosity called The Beast every year. It's the most extensive of the draft guides out there that he takes all year, basically, to formulate, and he puts out basically a month before the draft. And in looking at the Beast this year, you know, there's some consideration to, okay, who is actually the best tight end prospect? Because I don't think anybody out there would tell you Jelani Woods is it. He's not the most pro-ready. But in a situation like this, you don't need the most pro-ready player. That's the beauty of the value deal that you did for Austin Hooper, and why it was important to have Jeff Swaim, even as you didn't like the money for it, or a lot of you didn't like the money for it, just around $3 million, almost completely guaranteed for Jeff Swaim. You need somebody who knows how to run your system. Even if you don't like the way that guy ran your system last year, he provides value to the room. So while you get Austin Hooper up to speed, while you bring in whomever you're going to bring in at tight end, a rookie at this point, you can have that little bit of a grace period and a player who can pay dividends far into the future, a player who is still getting better in real time despite having played a lot of college football. He's still learning the nuances of this. You don't need instant impact at the tight end position the way that you did so desperately prior to free agency taking place. And as you kind of look through the tight end group, you understand that you're probably working with some more developmental players than you otherwise might have thought. if you've done your research on this the way that people like Dane Brugler and Greg Cosell have done. Trey McBride, the Colorado State tight end, is regarded as the best player. Greg Dulcich out of UCLA, different tight end. He is he's more Mike Gesicki than he is Luke Stocker, for lack of a better term. Because the Titans always have one Luke Stocker, one tree trunk of a human being that's there to function in a lot of different blocking roles. But as you look through this, you're probably not going to get the best tight end off the board, given the fact that you don't have a second and you're not picking at the top of the third right now. Perhaps an exchange will take place at some point during the draft process, or perhaps a prospect will fall close enough within their grasp for them to trade up. We have no idea how the draft board is going to play out on day one, much less, day 2 and day 3. But should they not get the top tight end in the class, there's a lot of guys who kind of have this potential that we haven't seen yet in college. Jelani Woods is one of them. Jeremy Ruckert, the Ohio State tight end, is another. I want you to hear Greg's analysis of Jeremy Ruckert, because when I've talked to scouts about this guy, there's a belief that he's going to be a better pro than he was a college player. And it's not because he still has development to do. It's because he's been playing in an offense that, one, doesn't use the tight end a ton, and two, always has stacked wide receivers and running backs who get the ball far more frequently. This was Cosell's analysis of the Ohio State tight end, Jeremy Ruckert.
And I would second that emotion big time. In fact, I said that in my transition notes. I said he possesses the athletic and receiving traits for the tight end position that could well make him a more productive NFL receiver than he was in college. Yeah. I said he's not quite the level of athlete and mover as a Kelsey or a Waller, but he's an efficient route runner with plus route quickness. He has a pretty refined understanding of how to run routes, the subtle movements that create separation. He's got enough play speed that he can run the vertical seam, and he can be a factor at all three levels. So I think you're dealing with a guy that is only going to get better and better as he continues to play. Keep in mind, he came out of Long Island. He was a big-time recruit, as most are at Ohio State. He was a big-time recruit. He was the number 2 tight end prospect nationally, and he just wasn't throwing the ball a lot at Ohio State. I think you could see him start his career much in the way that someone like Foster Moreau did with the Raiders, and he's still with the Raiders, I believe, and you're familiar with him coming out of LSU, where Foster Moreau is really not a bad player at all, and in fact, he probably has some tight end one traits, not at the level of his teammate Waller or Kelsey or Kittle, but so much of tight ends to me, obviously there's some guys that are just better than others, like the Kelseys. Sure. But then there's a whole bunch of guys like Dalton Schultz with the Cowboys, okay? Dalton Schultz caught 70 balls, I believe, last year and was targeted 115 or 120 times. Who's to say Ruckert in a similar situation couldn't be that guy? I mean, I think that he could be that guy, and it just depends on team and scheme.
So that's Greg Cosell. That's the thing that this boils down to more than anything. People look at the top players in any draft, and it's easy to do. You look at the top players in any draft at any position, and those are the names that you know. Those are the names that you associate throughout this entire process. And when you get a name that you don't recognize, not that these two aren't recognizable names, but they're not the top guy, right? There will be some consternation about the idea that the Titans didn't get the top guy whenever this draft process takes place. Now, as we've talked about before, it can't be last year's wide receiver situation where you wait until day 3, you trade up for Des Fitzpatrick. He doesn't make the roster out of training camp. He ends up getting cut, and then he's basically a fringe guy the rest of the year, hovering on your practice squad, and the scorn of the coaching staff for a considerable part of the season as they try and get him to understand how exactly it is that they do business over at St. Thomas Sports Park. And when we've talked to John Robinson about Des Fitzpatrick, they seem to think that that's the case that they're heading. We're getting questions in the Zone TV chat. This one from Twitch. Why do guys go to schools that do not showcase their talents? Well, you got to understand. Now, the one-time transfer rule has been in effect for both of these guys' career. In fact, Jelani Woods is a grad transfer. Was a grad transfer from Oklahoma State to Virginia. In fact, he's 2 years old, almost a full 2 years older than Jeremy Ruckert at Ohio State. If you're Jeremy Ruckert, you're probably thinking, okay, I'm the starting tight end for Ohio State. If I'm not projected to go as high as I think I should be, well, we'll have some opportunities to improve on that through the combine, through the pro days. Scouts obviously have a favorable opinion of him. Third-round money for a tight end in this year's draft class, it's pretty good. If you can do what you can do to distinguish yourself from the group, you can make more money for yourself. But at this point, it's very much a log jam, basically between the second and the third round, and really more halfway through the second round into the third round before you start talking about any of these tight ends. Will somebody get overdrafted? Sure. But when you look at how the situation falls for the Titans, there's a variety of guys who can fit what it is they do here. The role of blocker comes first. Can you be an Anthony Firkser in this system and find different ways at the tight end position to help this football team? I'm talking about the Firkser pre-2021, when there was more hope for what he could do with an expanded role. Turns out he's a package player. Turns out the way that they were initially deploying him in 2019 and 2020 made far more sense for his skill set. Turns out that unofficial depth chart that we all looked at and laughed at when they put it out in training camp that had Jeff Swaim as the starting tight end, no, he's the one who can do the most things within their system based on who they had on the roster. Now they're upgrading substantially just by adding Hooper, and can do so into the future should Austin Hooper perform well and get another big contract elsewhere. Should Austin Hooper fail miserably and end up washing out here in Tennessee, you're going to have that protection of having one of these tight ends, like whether it's Ruckert or Jelani Woods. Charlie Kohler is a name that people will pay attention to. Daniel Bellinger fits here a little less than I think those other names, but these are the guys who you will see discussed around the Tennessee Titans because they make more sense from a deployment standpoint. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they address the position, because I think this offense, just by upgrading that, can add a lot more than I think most people associate with the tight end. Wide receivers are nice. Wide receivers will help. Wide receivers are still a need here. But as you look for how the Titans are going to try and maximize their offensive efficiency based on how they operate with precedent, tight end is hugely important for this team, as I don't have to tell you, because you saw how much less comfortable a quarterback, particularly that quarterback, was in a situation where the tight ends couldn't be trusted or couldn't deliver in a way that you need them to. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. When we come back, speaking of draft stuff, we need to get into a conversation. Actually, I changed my mind, Lucas. I want to talk about the weekend that we had. I want to do a Panzika Preds minute. I want to talk about the weekend that we had. And then I want to talk about the Titans inside linebacking core, because apparently it's more in question than the fan base would like to believe. We've got Bruce Feldman at 12:20. Stick around. Show is jam-packed and loaded the rest of the way through. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Oh, nice of you to join us.
Hello.
How was your training?
I left it early. I heard footsteps. I bailed. So I got to go. I'm about to lose my job.
Oh, we got a couple tweets. Just enough. How's it feel?
We had to do our master segment right when our resident golf expert stepped in to help me out for a little bit.
That's right. You know, doesn't feel so good, does it? When people are actively talking about stealing your job.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. Every time you start to get a little too comfortable, be like, you know what? I'd like Brett to do today. Just today. We appreciate Brett Batchelor for helping us out for today's show. Lucas and I are going to be at Geodis Park tomorrow.
Yep.
We're doing a show. You're coming with me, which is new. This is very exciting. Who the hell is going to do the show from here?
Mac Morey is going to help us out. He'll be in studio running the board from the control room, but a lot going on tomorrow at Geodis Park.
Okay, so they're going to be playing soccer while we're on the air, and we will be able to, we're going to have the Zone TV stream set up. So you and I are basically going to be doing the radio show from the new soccer stadium, which I have not yet seen. You have been to.
Yes.
But you have not been to since completion?
No, I last went in July, I want to say, of 2021. So it was really coming along. They were kind of starting to put seats in. You could see the concept of what they were doing, but I have not been since they've pretty much finished it.
Okay, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, this is not something people can come to, right?
I believe fans can come to the open training.
Oh,
but
do we know that for sure before we tell people on the
I'll
radio?
double check that.
Okay.
But there will be player availability before the training session, so we'll get a chance to hear from some of the players and a tour of Geodis Park that I know you can participate in before the show if you want to take it all in. And
can we do all of that at 9:55, 55, or 59?
Yeah, I think we can squeeze it in.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to disrupt my morning. My schedule. No, I'm very excited for this. I'm looking forward to doing the show out there tomorrow from Geodis Park, so we will have a great time doing that. In the meantime, we wanted to do a Panzika Preds minute here as well. I gotta get Lucas's confidence back up after Brett Batchelor threatened to steal his job for an hour and 45 minutes throughout the course of the show, because it's only the second Preds game I've been able to physically attend this season. Of course, both games that I've been to, they've lost, so people want me nowhere near Bridgestone Arena.
What was the other one?
Oh, it was at the start of the season. I think it might have been. I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember exactly who the opponent was, but it was kind of like this one. It was basically close through the third period, and then they had an egregious error. And I don't mean to steal your Panzika Preds minute thunder, but since I was there, correspondent, boots on the ground, Roman Josi just missed a layup.
Yeah.
Just a layup.
Rare miss from the captain.
Oh. And then immediately you see the snide tweets coming in from hockey Twitter, Norris Trophy Twitter, which I was not familiar with until that. Cale Makar would never miss a bunny like that. But yeah, 1-1, basically into the third period. And then Roman misses. They had plenty of shots on goal. They were very active in front of the Florida net all night. Florida being the best team in hockey, well, the best team in the Eastern Conference right now, Avalanche in the Western Conference at this point, of course, in the Preds' own division. They lost 3-2 in overtime last night against the Penguins, but now their schedule, they get a little breathing room at this point as they try and hang on to their well, let me shut up and let you do the Panzika Preds minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, big picture, that's what you look at is where they are in the wild card standings right now. 1 point ahead of the Dallas Stars, and Vegas kind of on everybody's heels there on 84 points, 3 back of Nashville. At this point, getting into that top 3 in the Central is a tough task. The Central's been a fantastic division. The best team in hockey right now in Colorado leads the Central with 110 points. So you are 7 points back of St. Louis in that third spot in the Central. So probably going to need to lock down one of these 2 wild card spots with 10 games to go, 1 point ahead of Dallas. And the leaderboard for scoring is getting more and more fascinating with each passing game, as Matt Duchene and Philip Forsberg at 38 apiece. So Forsberg was the one to break the record initially, Victor Arvidsson's single-season goals record of 34, but he may not be the one to end up with the record.
Which is crazy. Crazy. Matt Duchene, man, I mean, you can't say enough about his redemption season that he's had this year. Now, we will see how this, because this is regular season, right? This is, I mean, it's not the Titans working for the 1 seed, getting the 1 seed and then losing, in dramatic fashion with that. They are not by any stretch of the imagination the Cup favorites, the Nashville Predators. They are going to be able at this point to hang on to that final wild card spot, but they'll be skirting in at this point, which is, by the way, when they last had their greatest success as an 8 seed coming into the postseason that year and then making that incredible Stanley Cup run in 2017. This has similar vibes because the offense is so good. Now, sputtered a little bit. You lose 4-1 at home to Florida. You go on the road to Pittsburgh last night. You take it to overtime, but you still go down by a goal. You can't have these moments where it evaporates all for nothing in the postseason, right? You have to show that you're worth it, that you have been worth it. Regular season feel good is all fine and well, but at some point there has to be a prove it moment in the postseason. It was fun to be at Bridgestone for that environment, man. I never have a bad time when I go to a Preds game, and it was just a tremendous, as we started the show with, just a tremendous weekend all around, sports fan or otherwise, because you had the weather here in Middle Tennessee all weekend, and because we had the opportunity. I mean, I had a hell of a day on Saturday. I woke. I don't know why I couldn't sleep in. I woke up. I was so excited to see our buddies the Wild Feathers at Mercy Lounge. Woke up at 4 a.m. Called my barber and said, "Hey, can I squeeze in for a haircut at 7:20?" The way that few people would be willing to open up their business for, but I appreciate him squeezing me in there. Went to Cheekwood for the Tulip Festival. Was incredible. I don't know why more people I don't want more people to go to Cheekwood because then it'd be harder to get tickets to go to Cheekwood. I don't know why the hell more people don't go to Cheekwood at this time of the year unless you're an allergy sufferer, and I completely understand. But then just decided, I haven't been to a Preds game all year. I don't know what overtook me. I barely leave my house, much less to spend all day out doing things. But just decided to slide in on that Preds-Panthers game on Saturday afternoon after we had gone to an engagement party on top of this. I was really struggling. By the time we got to F1 Fellowship at Nobles, midnight in East Nashville, after the Mercy Lounge show with the Wild Feathers, I was really hurting. I made it through the Preds game sober enough, but Mercy Lounge took a hatchet to me. That was a tough scene. I did make it. I want to talk about the Mercy Lounge show really quickly because it's a Nashville staple. It's going away. We'll do more Titans, and Bruce Feldman will be here 12:20, so we can pivot back into sports stuff. But I felt this for the first time in a substantial way this weekend. And this morning as well, when I saw news of yet another Nashville institution, old Nashville institution, having to close because we are being utterly taken over as a city by development. This is the cost of economic growth, but it hit different to see our friends at the Mercy Lounge this weekend. And I want to talk about that a little bit coming up next. I want to ask you the question. Now, this is happening more often. Has there been an institution here in Nashville, something that you've considered an institution here in Nashville? Now, if you're gonna get stupid with it and tell us that you were horrified to find out that the old Deja Vu is now a Whole Foods, then maybe you're playing a different game than we are. But one of these moments, whether it's a music venue, a restaurant, somewhere in Nashville that's closed down, that's caught you, that shocked you, the fact that it's just going away, because we've had that happen more and more lately. I want to hear your nominations for one that's caught you off guard, one that's hurt in particular, because this weekend, really three that have come up in the last basically month and a half that I want to get into coming up next. We'll talk about that. We'll do some Mock Draft Monday with Bruce Feldman as well. Final hour. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Pre-draft visits going on around the NFL, including with the Titans. Ian Rappaport reporting that former San Diego State tight end Daniel Bellinger will be visiting the Titans. Bellinger was down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile a couple of months ago. College basketball, Tennessee forward and former five-star prospect Brandon Huntley Hatfield announced Sunday he is entering the transfer portal. Huntley Hatfield averaged 4 points and 3 rebounds per game in his freshman season. The Atlanta Braves remain at SunTrust Park after splitting a 4-game series against Cincinnati to open the season. Tonight, they will start a 3-game set against Washington. First pitch is at 6:20. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Made it to the final hour on this Monday. Welcome in if you're just now joining us. So happy to have you along for the ride. Welcome back if you've been hanging out with us for the first 2 hours so far. We've had a fun show, ready to finish strong to get another great week started. Lucas is back there making it happen. Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports will join us momentarily in about 18 minutes, and we will discuss his mock draft, one of the most informed mock drafts that you will find all, now I don't even want to say off season. I want to say non-football season long. There is no such thing as the off season. Just a period of time without actual football being played. So Bruce will join us later, and we will have a lively discussion about the things that he's learned through his reporting in putting this project together. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll do a little draft conversation later on because there's become a bit of a concern among Titans fans, it seems, that they fear their team will not take an offensive lineman in an early round for a third straight year, but they fear even worse, an inside linebacker at a position where they already have 4 of them, and 2 of them who are operating at a high level, and 1 of them who's a third-round rookie, or at least was a third-round rookie that missed a substantial portion of his season, and probably still has a lot of room to grow. We'll get to that in a minute. But where I want to start is this. We went to the Mercy Lounge this weekend. We had the Wild Feathers on Wednesday. It's the first time that I had been in Mercy Lounge. Now, you guys know that I'm a transplant. There's a lot of people living in Nashville that are transplants. We're coming up on 7 years. I feel like now that I can say I've been here for the better part of a decade, I feel comfortable in my ability to assess mainstays that are being wiped out by how much faster our city is growing, even in the last 5 years, even in the last 3 years, where this has taken off in a meaningful way. It's offensive that I've waited this long, basically until the Mercy Lounge is closing, to attend a concert there. This is one of the things that makes our city spectacular. It's closing, and in its place, I don't know what's going to be there. I don't know if they're going to still try and make it a music venue, just call it by a different name. I don't know if they're going to do what's happening all over the place, which is to turn it into luxury apartments, townhomes, condos, whatever, just more places for all the people who are moving to our city want to live. Is 7 years long enough for me to say hour? I feel like I could say hour now. Nodding doesn't help me. Thank you. Always there for me. Lucas, just with the silence. Hovering. Useless. 615-737-1045 is the number. Rotiers is another one of these places. I saw this morning that Joey's House of Pizza is closing down. These are Nashville institutions. Opryland is another one that comes up regularly. The theme park, not the monstrosity that lives just east of us right now. So many different places across Nashville that have made, that are critical to the fabric of this place. They're going away. They're getting picked off left and right. Real estate is something that, we talk about it every time I tell you about the Ashton Group and the work that they can do for you. There is good in it because our city is growing at a rapid rate. But there is, I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic when I say tragedy, but there's tragedy in it. Lucas, I told you it had been probably 3 years since I've seen a just any kind of musical act live.
Which is wild.
Well, wild for you because you go to these things regularly, but Will Bowling is back there nodding his head in approval, or rather disapproval, that I have not been to a concert prior to Saturday in 3 years. But I've never seen a show like that. Well, I mean, I have seen shows like that, but not in a very long time, where you feel it. You feel the history of the place. You feel the history of the band that's playing there. The Wild Feathers, man, they just... Ricky and Ben and Joel and Tyler, who we had the opportunity to have in studio, they put on a show unlike anything that I've felt in a long time. Where we talk about, football teams, they want to make you they want to make the opponent feel them, right? Physically feel them. I physically felt the presence of them and the power of that place in a concert, in a live setting that's, really unique to a place like Nashville. Music City, not just the major labels that we're on the same block from, but from all the things that make us so special. And I hated to see this go. It's happening more and more. I mean, you can't go to the Hermitage Cafe anymore for a 4 a.m. omelet because the Hermitage Cafe is no more. And, as I look at the parking lot that I used to park in when I couldn't afford parking downtown when I first moved to Nashville to be able to go out on Broadway or to go to a Preds game that I just managed to scrap together upper deck money to go hang out. That's now turning into a Ritz-Carlton residences. I didn't think that I was going to be doing old man radio at 28 years old, like the back in my day stuff. But man, that hurt.
Paradise Park.
Paradise, not even the latest edition of Paradise Park, like the original.
Yeah.
Both now wiped out. Going to be Garth Brooks, what mega honky-tonk monstrosity, God knows what, right?
It's going to be called Low Places.
Is it really?
No, that's just a total guess.
Well, honestly, it's a terrible missed marketing opportunity if they don't call it Low Places.
But the Mercy Lounge thing, you could just tell the relationship between artist and venue. That was what made that really cool.
And we're getting ready to go through this with Nissan, in all likelihood. The thing that was Adelphia Coliseum, that was LP Field, that is Nissan Stadium, it's going to be, now that's a much longer play, but these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. As we evolve as a city, those, the things that make it so special, they're eroding. I've made a lot of Yellowstone references lately, but I'm reminded of this watching Yellowstone last night, where they're trying to build an airport in the middle of John Dutton's ranch, right? And he's fighting them off tooth and nail to keep them from building a damn airport, an international airport in the middle of a ranch in Montana. Now, this is a different kind of conversation, right? We were already a city. Now we're just inviting more people to our city, more drunks to our city, to take it over and turn it into Garth Brooks' mega honky-tonk monstrosity bar and grill, right? Always a bar and grill. The fact that Luke Bryan has a floor just for sushi is deeply problematic, especially given that we are nowhere near an ocean at any given point. But I want to know if you guys are feeling the same thing. Then we'll get back into sports stuff. We got Bruce coming up next. Buffalo, who today calls us from Murfreesboro, wants to weigh in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. What you got, Buffalo?
I miss when the owners of Greer Stadium used to call me up and say, hey, can you come and fix our sidewalks for one more season?
Just one more.
Places like Starwood, we used to go watch the Charlie Daniels One for the Sun concert at Star. There, Irene's Kitchen in Hendersonville, Mallard's Diner in Hendersonville. I remember back in the day, they used to have the four-wheel drive monster truck races at the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
They used to drive around the outside of that racetrack and jump cars. It was the most spectacular thing you ever seen in your life. But they just reduce it down to just little bits of entertainment, and that's all we get nowadays. Y'all have a good day.
Thanks for the call, Buffalo. Safe travels today, calling us from Murfreesboro. You think we were going to get a year into the radio show, year plus into the radio show? Not even a year plus, basically, a year and a month, basically, since we started doing the radio show, and then we'd be in. I miss this. Get me back started.
Demo's downtown is another one that's been around for a while.
Well, that's offensive because it's Demos's. It's not Demos.
I've always called it Demo's.
Well, it's not.
Is this like Kroger's or Kroger?
Well, no. This is different because it's not just, well, it's a pronunciation thing. It's not a letter thing. It's not Kroger's versus Kroger. You just called it Demos versus Demos's.
Yeah, I know there is an apostrophe there, but growing up, I always called it Demos.
Coach Mack is shaking a fist somewhere. Yeah, I mean, it happens, right? I don't know. I just felt it differently because it's a music venue, right?
Mercy Lounge, yeah.
Mercy Lounge going away, having given opportunities, we were talking to Ricky and them we were lucky enough to be able to go hang out backstage with them before the show, and God knows what they got into afterwards. They were trying to get us to come out to Donaldson after the fact, and we had F1 fellowship at Nobles that had to be attended to. I only lasted an hour. Did you make it to the entire race, by the way?
Absolutely.
Good for you. Oof. I can't.
Went home immediately, though.
I cannot live that way anymore. I had somebody come up to me and was like, yeah, I was thinking of going home. I was like, oh, good. I can walk out with you. I don't feel bad. Somebody's leaving before I do. I just have to physically walk behind you out the door. But just from a standpoint of meaning, of value, of still being true to the identity of the city, to see a place like that shut its doors and to have, places like Exit Inn threatened throughout the course of the pandemic and all these different things being turned into hotels, parking for the hotels or parking for the apartment buildings that keep being piled on top of one another, and I'm convinced half of them are empty, but what do I know? I wanted to get a little emotional there before we pivoted back into draft talk, because I'm sure a lot of you guys and gals are feeling this same kind of feeling. Evan is in Nashville up next on 104.5 The Zone. Hello, Evan.
Hey, Buck. Hope you're doing well. I just wanted to say, the whole building up the city and all that stuff, it's just part of life. However, man, that J-Hop news, that absolutely ruined my day. Now I'm just stuck with IHOP. So thanks for that one, man. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, he's J-Hop, Joey's House of Pizza. That one, their hours always so bizarre. I never knew when I would be able to go. Like, it's never open during conventional hours. And if you've ever seen the operation in there, it's as impressive and as disorienting as anything you've ever seen. And it's been family owned, and these things, they go away as we get more corporate, as we get bigger, badder, more, I don't know, less Nashville, it feels.
Few more shows at Mercy Lounge, I believe, before they shut down. But.
Yeah, so you can still go. It was the last show for the Wild Feathers at Mercy Lounge. They're a part of this Last Call at Mercy Lounge series. I know we're saying, normally we don't like to do free shout-outs, but I think in this case we have to make some exceptions.
They crushed it.
They did. That was really, really unique. I think I looked over at you and your roommate Blue at one point and was just like, all right, I get it.
Yeah, he did.
I get it. I'm having a lot of fun. It takes a lot. But they got it. All right, when we come back, we'll do Mock Draft Monday with Bruce Feldman. He'll tell you the player that he thinks the Tennessee Titans should take at number 26 overall, as well as insights and analysis on these prospects that you won't get anywhere else. That's next. Welcome back on this Monday. Do a little mock draft Monday here in just a second. Bruce Feldman of The Athletic, Fox Sports, of course, will join us, and we will discuss his selection. He does one of these mock drafts each and every year, but the difference between Bruce's mock draft and everybody else's mock draft, or a lot of other people's mock draft, is that Bruce does one based off 6 weeks of reporting that actually has credibility, substance to it, and analysis from the people across both college and the pros that he talks to formulate his analysis and to get a better understanding of who exactly these prospects are. It's damn good, and it's why we're grateful to have Bruce on each year as he does this. Bruce Feldman of The Athletic and Fox Sports joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Bruce, appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
So I just kind of laid out prior to you hopping on the phone there, Bruce, how you go about this. But just to refresh the audience, you take this mock draft far more seriously than most people take mock drafts. We're grateful for it because there's actual information in there as opposed to, well, I just really like, an inside linebacker to the Titans at 26. What's your process for this every year when you put it together?
Well, so first, thanks for the kind words on that. Second, so really what I try to do is I spend usually about 6 weeks. Some of it overlaps the combine where I can go see a bunch of NFL sources and be around people in the process. But also what I really want to dig into is the guys who tend to know the players the best are the ones who either coached them or especially the ones who had to play against them, because they've studied them on film and then they've played them in games. And sometimes you get a little different picture of what you're getting with a guy when you've actually played him. And so while I think there's a lot of good insight that you can get from the draft analyst part of it, I think when you just get a real candid perspective from the coaches who played them, I think it can be next level. And so that's what I try. I'm not saying this is more encompassing or anything, but I just feel like it's a different way to look at the draft and the prospects, because if I was a fan of a certain school and somebody saying my team is going to take this offensive lineman or this receiver, great. I mean, I can see what his stats are. But what I'm really trying to do, and there's some really unique examples in here, like what's the difference between Chris Olave and Garrett Miller? I think you have a lot of guys who can say a certain thing about, okay, they're this or they're that, or they can quote you their stats, or maybe even what they did at the combine. But I think when you get, people who've actually had the game plan and then play them, when you get, Garrett Wilson at Ohio State, we know he ran really well at the combine, but here's the things that maybe scare other teams more about Wilson than they did about Olave and that kind of thing. And so I think this is a good window into, a lot of times, I talked to a bunch of SEC D-line coaches. They played a lot of guys who were considered first-round picks. And so I think their perspective is really unique, and that's what I was really shooting for.
And that's why you can go to theathletic.com to get not just Bruce's mock draft every offseason as we go through this, but his great insights and analysis on college football. Great draft assets like Dane Brugler's Beast, which he puts together. I'm sure you talked to Dane at some point through the pre-draft process, mm-hmm. Bruce. That thing always blows me away because he's got players I would have never even considered as anywhere close to a pro prospect. We were marveling here that there was a write-up on Jarrett Garantano, the former Tennessee quarterback, in Dane Brugler's Beast draft guide every year. The work that you guys do collectively on this always is impressive.
Yeah, it's amazing the volume of stuff that he is able to pour through. And there'll be times where, like, I did something behind the scenes with all the scouts for the Senior Bowl at midseason. And there's a couple anonymous players, comments about an anonymous player, where you're trying not to bury the player from the comments that they're making. And Dane will say, hey, is that so-and-so? And I'll be like, yes, it is, or whatever. It's like, so I think a lot of times there is so much overlap where the information, it's like, it's just great to have that kind of depth of knowledge. And in Dane's case, I mean, he's living it 365 days a year and pouring over that process. And so, you know, it's such an amazing resource to have. And what he puts together, I know, you know, I think the beast is a beast from our editor standpoint because it's just so much work and volume to sift through and pour through. And I mean, I think we're all kind of football nerds, so to be part of, to have that as a resource is invaluable.
At Bruce Feldman, CFB is where you can follow him, and of course the links to the mock draft are available there. We've just retweeted it for anybody who would like to take a look through Bruce's mock draft and for any of the offerings at theathletic.com. Was there anybody, Bruce, before we talk about Tennessee here more specifically, was there anybody who you spoke to from the coaching intel side about a player who kind of surprised you in the analysis based on, you know, whether you have covered this player game, been around the program at all, that maybe not changed your opinion of someone, but gave you a different perspective, as you mentioned, from a way that you were looking at him initially?
Yeah, I'd say there was two. One on the positive side was Devin Lloyd, the linebacker at Utah. He was ultra productive, but I ended up talking to 6 different coaches who played him, and every single one was gushing about him. Like a lot of times you get really favorable comments about what caliber athlete somebody is or that kind of thing, but it won't be, you know, there'll be a but or something like that. With him, it was just glowing about him across the board in so many layers, and to the point where I think in my mock draft is probably higher than he is almost any other mock draft, where some people have him in the teens. I had him going up as high as 5 because I suspect that there's going to be, obviously some of it has to come to position need, but if what I've heard is in line with what I'm thinking the scouts and the personnel people are getting, I think that there's probably a little more respect for him than maybe there is in other mocks. On the flip side, and this guy was a terrific player for Notre Dame, but I think there was a little bit more of the skepticism a little bit on Kyle Hamilton, the huge safety from Notre Dame. He has, terrific range and beyond prototype size. But a couple of the coaches, in fact, the first 2 coaches I spoke to were all like, yeah, I could see why he's a first-round pick. But I'm shocked that people are saying could be a top 5 pick because they were worried about how, if he could handle coverage and, could he tackle a slot? They think they worried about that a little more. Now, other people I ended up talking to loved his instincts, obviously loved his size and how physical he could be. But there was that. And then you kind of wonder, springing it forward, where a couple of these coaches who played him were a little bit like underwhelmed by his coverage skills. But it's like, if he in the NFL, is he going to be covering a slot? He's probably going to be covering a tight end if he's in coverage. So I think it's one of those things where maybe they were able to exploit some things that maybe some NFL teams may not end up because of how he's managed in a defense if it comes to it. So those were things that were really eye-opening for me. Bruce
Feldman of The Athletic is our guest here on 104.5 The Zone. All right, now to the Titans then, Bruce. Assuming that they do not trade out of 26, which it seems, I don't know if you've had discussions with people about trading around in this draft. It seems like it may be more difficult to move out if with one of those, what basically amounts to a second-round pick there at this point. But you have them selecting Tyler Lindenbaum, the center from Iowa, who's regarded as one of the best interior offensive line prospects in this draft. What was the logic and what was the intel from the coaching side of things?
Yeah, a lot of the guys in the Big Ten who I talked to faced him just rave about his athleticism, his tenacity, what he can do scheme-wise. I mean, I had one guy compare him to Jeff Saturday, who thinks he's going to be a Pro Bowler for a long time. As a former state champion wrestler, he was dominant often in the Big Ten. And for getting a guy like that late in the first round, where you're talking about a guy who a lot of people think will be a Pro Bowler consistently, I think that's just such a value where he can go in there and be a guy that – could he be a guard? Does he have enough length? Is he a little undersized for that? Probably. But in terms of, we've seen, having a guy who's a center who is that good and that athletic is rare. And to get somebody who you think can be a Pro Bowler late in the first round, I think he will be tough to pass up if he's still on the board at 26. Now, if he's opposite a huge nose guard and that, he's not uncovered, that is an area where there is some concerns about him. But in terms of what he can do for a team scheme-wise, I think there's a lot to like. And I think, it's not like he's 275 pounds. He's almost 300 pounds. So
right.
He has gotten bigger. And I think, yes, his arms aren't, you'd like him to be a little longer, but just in terms of the physical tools, the tenacity, the athleticism, I think there's a lot to get excited about.
People much smarter than me when it comes to offensive line play have raved about his technical prowess as something that negates a little bit of that size disadvantage that he may have. Obviously, there's only certain things that you can't coach at the NFL level, but he seems to project very, very well in the pro game. Bruce, looking at this mock draft, and we'll get you out of here on this. We appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. 3 first-round quarterbacks is what your mock draft has. Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, and Kenny Pickett. I guess basically I should have done that in reverse order.
Actually, I have a fourth one in there at 31. I had the Falcons trading back into the first round to grab Matt Corral from Ole Miss. Obviously, fans in the SEC know a lot about.
Sure.
So he'd be the fourth one.
I apologize. I missed that when I was putting together the numbers today. So 4 first-round quarterbacks in a quarterback class that is regarded as less than comparative to most years. What is it about Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder outside of need for the teams that are drafting them? You have Corral to the Falcons, as you mentioned, to trade back up, and then the Detroit Lions at 32 taking Desmond Ridder. What is it about those two that you think makes them first-round worthy?
Well, Corral has a lot of arm talent. He's got a really quick release. The ball jumps out of his hand. He's very athletic. He's a tough kid. Now, here's the hesitation part. He is not that big of a guy.
Right.
And so as tough as he is, he thinks he's a middle linebacker the way he plays. How well will he hold up when he's being hit by NFL guys if he's not making more business decisions? The other thing that was a legit concern when I talked to an NFL quarterback coach was, you know what, we know he and Lane got along well, but there is some concerns, as this person put it, he's had a bumpy path and now he's come out on the other side. He's going to be expected to be the leader of a bunch of men with families if he's a first-round quarterback. How confident are teams about that?
Yeah.
Maybe late in the first round, I think because of his talent, I think he's a roll of the dice. Desmond Ridder, there are no concerns about his character. Everybody likes him. He's consistent. He's smart. He's a good athlete. He tested really well. Now, there is some skepticism as well as he tested at the combine. Does he look that fast when he's on the field? The other big concern, and I'll read you this quote from this second coach, I think he'll struggle in the NFL. He's tough as nails, and that impressed me the most. He took hits. He's got that wiry toughness, and he was in a great system fit there. But I just don't think he's accurate enough. And that last part, he got more accurate over his career, but the questions about his accuracy, I think that's the part that, would give me a lot of pause. Because if you're simply not accurate enough on 3rd and 12 in the NFL, there's a big difference between being college open and NFL open. College open, there's a lot of daylight between the receiver and the defensive player. In the NFL, like the defensive player can smell what they had for breakfast on the offensive player, and that's still considered open. Are those going to be picks? Are those going to be balls that sail over the receiver's head? I would be hesitant on Desmond Ridder if I have those accuracy concerns.
Those are the kinds of insights and analysis. Much more there for you to read at theathletic.com. Bruce Feldman does a great job with that every year. And, of course, all the great coverage of the college game that you can find from Bruce and his colleagues there. Bruce, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and we appreciate it. I hope to catch up soon as we get closer to the college football season.
Always a pleasure. I appreciate it. Great talking football with you guys.
That's Bruce Feldman of The Athletic and Fox Sports. Man's got it going on. 615-737-1045 is how you react to any of what you just heard. I think the Desmond Ridder stuff is interesting, That's a pretty stinging indictment from a coach looking at the accuracy of Desmond Ridder. Again, the graph that you just heard Bruce read, I think he'll struggle in the NFL. He's tough as nails. That impressed me the most. He took hits. He's got that wiry toughness, and he was a great system fit there, but I just don't think he's accurate enough. Yeah, you can't have that. The accuracy, you can work with everything else if you've got the accuracy. There are mechanical things that maybe you can clean up that will improve it. But if you don't think that even after you've worked with his elongated delivery, which are things that are concerns for NFL team, his footwork can get scattershot when he's under pressure, and he's going to rarely be working from clean pockets at the NFL level. All things that you have to factor in, especially here, when you're considering, all right, is this the guy who can operate best as a succession plan for Ryan Tannehill?
How much has Josh Allen's development, though, in the NFL maybe led general managers or scouts to pause when trying to write off a prospect with accuracy issues? Because that was the biggest thing with Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming.
Yeah, but he's the one guy.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. He's probably the only example you can look at with that being the biggest red flag and it materializing the way it did.
And with that, the athletic traits were so overwhelming. What pick was Josh Allen? Was he top 10? Maybe, Lucas, if you can look that up for me. Because that's basically the question around quarterbacks who come. That was Jordan Love, right? Jordan Love is probably the most recent comparison to what you were looking at with Josh Allen coming out of college, one from Wyoming, the other from Utah State. Okay, he's playing a much lower level of football, but I mean, in college he was under 50%.
Seventh overall pick was Josh Allen.
So you're looking at him and saying, okay, if he's Cam Newton, if the accuracy is going to be a struggle, but we can figure out the rest of it because he can be so dominant based on the traits, then you're willing to sacrifice a little of that. It just so happened that in the middle of all this, Josh Allen turned into not just rocket launcher, not just the next coming of Cam Newton athletically, but also developing accuracy that was helped a lot by the fact that they traded for Stephon Diggs. Cole Beasley helped that offense as well. You've gotten legit chemistry between he and the local product, the Ole Miss tight end.
Dawson
Knox, which has paid dividends for them, and certainly for Dawson Knox's career, as he, I think, is getting ready to come up on a second contract here very, very soon. Josh Allen is one of 1,000, right? That's going to happen with. You can get away with it with a guy like Malik Willis because it's not accuracy that's the concern. The concern with Malik Willis is, okay, he's not been asked to do any of this stuff, basically. He's been running a high school offense under Hugh Freeze. Can he figure it out? He hasn't been asked to, doesn't mean he can't. Ridder's different. Ridder, you're not talking about overwhelming athleticism that would put you in as a top 10 pick. Ridder, you're talking about, okay, competitive, played a lot of college football, 4-year starter, which is rare. And you go on and you say, okay, good velocity, good touch. I just don't think he's accurate enough. Uh-oh. That's not the same conversation. We're not talking about developmental prospect that way. We're talking about, okay, is he developed? Those are the two different versions that are being had. And, teams are looking for reasons not to draft you, right? Tell me why I shouldn't spend the 32nd overall pick on Desmond Ridder. Give me one reason and I'll go a different direction, a different position, and I'll, try and bolster my roster elsewhere. That's the way that the talent evaluators look at this, through the prism of, okay, why shouldn't I do this? And if we're going to do this, what does he do the best so I can maximize him? 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Last call for phone calls. We'll do that next. We've got polls to update. A lot of good stuff to wrap the show up with. I'm Buck Reising. It's 1045 The Zone.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
USFL promos are on the television right now in the studio. Apparently, we have football this weekend, spring football. Jeff Fisher and the Michigan Panthers, they're all playing in Birmingham. So the New Jersey Generals and Birmingham Stallions are the opener for the USFL season. I guess I'll watch. It's football.
Of course we will.
Jeff, you know who Jeff Fisher's quarterback is?
Yeah, old Shea Patterson.
Well, he's also got Paxton Lynch of Memphis fame on there. He was talking about I need to find the analysis from Jeff Fisher that was so laugh out loud funny. He compared Paxton Lynch to some quarterback with above average mobility that you would, here it is. From RJ Young, this is about a week ago. No, longer than that, but a month ago. We all saw what happened. This is a quote from Jeff Fisher. We all saw what happened in Buffalo this year with Josh Allen, with the way Brian Daboll used Josh there in his legs. We're going to use Paxton's legs. You'll see where we're coming from. Paxton Lynch and Josh Allen. You're talking about comparisons to Josh Allen and draft prospects. Paxton Lynch, Josh Allen. That's a tough one. That's a tough one tough connection to draw. But best of luck to Coach Fisher. That will be interesting to see how that plays out. Tomorrow, we're broadcasting live from Geodis Park. We are going to have Pete Pranica, the voice of the Memphis Grizzlies. They're going to find out their opponent in the coming days as the play-in gets underway in the NBA. John Morant expected to be back in the near future. Did make his return in that game over the Pelicans where they scored 141. Didn't really need much of Ja, but good to see him getting his feet back on him. It was a knee sprain initially, the injury to Ja. So that will be good to catch up with Pete and his. I want to know if the chain that Brevin Jordan put on him during the broadcast was real.
He actually will be driving on his way to Nashville when he joins us because he's going to the Preds game tomorrow.
Oh, very exciting.
So we'll ask him if he is wearing the chain in the car.
Well, okay. Well, we'll look forward to catching up with Pete Pranica then and look forward to broadcasting live out at Geodis Park. Let's do some polls.
Zoinks like, hey, Scoob, stop the count, stop the count. Yeah. The polls have closed. The votes are in. It's time for a poll update, Scoob. A poll update? Yeah. Zoinks, Scoob. Here's Buck Reising Show daily correspondent Lucas Panzica. Lucas Panzica? Yeah.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. Custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers. They will deliver it right to you when it gets manufactured. What is the best part of non-football season? 36% say it's March Madness. 31% say the draft. 17% the Masters. 16% the NHL or NBA playoffs.
Are you surprised that the draft has that high of a percentage?
No, I'm not surprised. I thought that might have the highest percentage, but people love March Madness.
It's true. March Madness is one of the greatest times of year, without doubt. It was a tremendous weekend for non-football season across sports, even if the Grizz and the Preds did not win both of their games that they were both participating in this weekend.
What is the most embarrassing way you have seen a coaching tenure come to an end? I figured we would get some good responses here. Gary says, see Jeremy Pruitt, Jeremy Pruitt, Jeremy Pruitt, and Jeremy Pruitt. Eldon says, Urban is probably it, but that's because of all the issues leading up to it and what's come out since. As far as the exact ending, may have to go with Lane Kiffin being left on the tarmac.
Yeah, I mean, for Lane, that had to have been the worst, the most disgraceful. We're talking about this within the context of Frank Vogel being, just embarrassing the way that the Lakers handled that particular situation. Urban Meyer is up there. Urban Meyer has had, I think, the most disastrous ending of any NFL head coach that we've ever seen.
Just the most disastrous tenure in general.
True. Bobby Petrino has disgrace in his NFL and college background.
He certainly comes to mind.
He's done it twice. 2 different stops. We should have asked Bruce that question. I thought to have Lucas make sure that he was prepared for one.
Which I did.
I forgot to ask the question. I'm sorry, buddy.
Tomahawk Chop, a noted Alabama fan, says it has to be Mike Price. That is a great one because Mike Price had to resign in scandal without even coaching a game for Alabama in 2003, I want to say.
Oh, that's
some
right.
Issues at a strip club in Florida and some money being charged to his hotel room.
Maybe that strip club is also now a Whole Foods. Like it here is.
Can't rule it out.
Like it is here in Nashville.
Kenneth says, do we get to count Greg Schiano at Tennessee?
Oh, yeah. I guess you can't. I mean, because he was technically hired and then very summarily not hired. John Curry, probably more disaster from John Curry's standpoint. And Bev Davenport, who got in trouble but did not say.
I love Peyton Manning.
Not near enough, Bev.
Thomas says one basketball coach threw himself a year-long thank you ceremony just to lose his last regular and postseason games to his biggest rival and retire. He stopped dyeing his hair after that just so he wouldn't be recognized and shamed in public. I'm trying to remember who that was.
That doesn't ring any bells. Oh, there's my guy. Why was he so quiet?
He's coming out from the same output as the club music. It's Coach K. Oh, come on. A lot of Bobby Petrino references. That one really does sum it up as well. Okay, we haven't really gotten to this, but at what age should we take away people's microphones? 26% say 70, 13% say 80, 61% say however old Gil Brandt is.
Yeah, listen, we did not talk about the Dwayne Haskins, the tragic passing of Dwayne Haskins today. We're going to do that tomorrow because I felt we needed a little more room than we had today to do that. And we're going to play that Gil Brandt audio. And Adam Schefter was in a bad spot this weekend with the way that he broke the news, but Gil Brandt made it 10 times worse. And then an apology from the Twitter account that he allegedly does not run himself felt a bit hollow after he said Dwayne Haskins, who passed away at the age of 24, was basically living to die.
Yeah, at least one of them apologized.
Oh, God.
Which Nashville staple are you going to miss the most? Mercy Lounge, Joey's House of Pizza, Ernest Tubbs Record Shop, or we encourage you to write in another one. 47% are going to miss Joey's House of Pizza, 25% Mercy Lounge, 22% Ernest Tubbs. Bird says New Life Records. Jack says affordable housing.
Yeah, they have. So I live in North Nashville. I live right off Rosa Parks there, and they have lots in my neighborhood that are reserved for affordable housing. And the house that they have just built in one of those lots looks to be approximately a $500,000 home, which now in Nashville is affordable housing.
Affordable housing, an old Nashville staple of a bygone era.
Yeah, that's economics, kid. Tough scene. Those the polls?
Those are the polls.
That's the show. Blaine and Mickey is up next. They will continue to keep you entertained. We talk to you tomorrow from Geodis Park if I don't catch you tonight on A to Z Sports Primetime. See you.